higher, 120 kilometers per hour, and her speed was 100 kilometers per hour. My second question is, at what time did the two of us meet? This is an introduction to the topic linear motion. So the subject is mathematics. The subject is mathematics, and our topic is linear motion. Linear motion. So, my dear students, there are different things that I want us to get on this topic. We'll start with vehicles moving in the same direction. The first concept we'll deal with is vehicles moving in the same direction. Vehicles moving in the same direction. For the vehicles moving in the same direction, we need to know, one, the relative speed. Relative speed. And the relative speed for vehicles moving in the same direction is given by subtracting their average speeds. Subtracting their average speeds. So, my dear student, from the example illustration that I had given, these vehicles, my Land Cruiser and my Nissan Matatu, that left me 1 hour earlier, we were moving in the same direction. Both of us from Thika to Nairobi, and my speed was 120 kilometers per hour, and the speed of the Nissan Matatu was 80 kilometers per hour. So from this example, if you are told to get the relative speed, you will subtract our relative speeds, and it will be 120 kilometers per hour minus 80 kilometers per hour. That is how we get relative speed for vehicles moving in the same direction. And this will be 20 kilometers per hour. That was just an illustration. Another thing that, my dear student, you need to get on these particular vehicles or any bodies or maybe motorcycles, bicycles, or the kind of moving particles is, now that my Nissan Matatu left Thika 1 hour earlier than me and have a higher speed than the Nissan Matatu. That means before we get to Nairobi, obvious, I am going to overtake the Nissan Matatu. So the second question is time taken to overtake. Time taken to overtake. And how do we get time taken to overtake? We'll take the distance between them. Distance between them. When I say them, is the moving particles, whether the vehicles, motorcycles or bicycles or anything, divided by the relative speed. Divided by the relative speed. Those are two concepts that you need to understand, my dear student, on the concept of vehicles or bodies moving in the same direction. What about moving in opposite direction? Moving in opposite direction. While vehicles or any moving particles are moving in opposite direction. Which example did I give? My dear student, I know back at home you are responding. The example is about my Land Cruiser and the Range Rover of my wife from there, where I was moving from Thika at a speed of 120 kilometers per hour. And she was moving from Nairobi at a speed of 100 kilometers per hour. The question is, obvious, both of us are going to meet. When I say we are going to meet, I mean our vehicles are going to meet because we are moving in opposite direction. Again, you need to get the relative speed. Relative speed, relative speed for vehicles moving in opposite direction, we earned their average speeds. We earned their average speeds. we earn their average speeds. So I know that from here we can calculate that our relative speed between my Land Cruiser and our Range Rover will be 120 kilometers per hour plus 100 kilometers per hour. Why? Moving in opposite direction, we earned their speeds, and it will be 220 kilometers per hour. Now, I have a question that I know you'll be answering back at home, even if I'm not here. My question is, what is the other thing that you're going to be asked? In this case, you'll be asked, at what time did the two vehicles meet? Time taken to meet. Time taken to meet. Time taken to meet is given by distance between them. Distance between them over the relative speed. Distance between them over the relative speed. Over the relative speed. So those are two important concepts for both vehicles moving in the same direction and vehicles moving in opposite direction that you need to understand for you to get this topic of linear motion. Having understood this, I will give an example that we are going to do together. So I have said we are moving from Thika to Nairobi in the same direction. The Nissan Matatu started the journey earlier than I did. And my Land Cruiser overtook the Nissan Matatu. Why? My Land Cruiser was having a higher speed. So you'll be asked the time that the Land Cruiser overtook the Nissan Matatu, given by distance between the two vehicles over the relative speed. Again, we have said to get the relative speed, we are going to subtract the two speeds. Then I have said here I am moving from Thika with my Land Cruiser at a speed of 120 kilometers per hour. My wife moving from Nairobi with the Range Rover at a speed of 100 kilometers per hour. We are going to meet. My question is, at what time did the two vehicles meet? Distance between the two of them over relative speed. And to get the relative speed for vehicles moving in opposite direction, we earned their speeds. Let us have an example on the same. So we are going to write this example that we are going to do together. I will start with the vehicles moving in the same direction, and if time allows, we'll do a question on vehicles moving in opposite direction. So we're going to start with the example of the vehicles moving in the same direction, and I will write the question. This is the question. A bus left Makindo. A bus left Makindo. Bus left Makindo at 11:45 a.m. and traveled towards Mombasa, and traveled towards Mombasa at an average speed of 80 kilometers per hour. A Nissan Mararu, a Nissan left Makindo. So the two vehicles were both leaving Makindo at 1:15 p.m. on the same day. And traveled along the same road at an average speed of 1 120 kilometers per hour. The distance between Makendo and Mombasa, the distance between Makendo and Mombasa is 400 kilometers. Yeah. Question A. So we'll first do question A. Question A. Determine the time of the day, the time of the day, the Nissan overtook the bus. 5 good marks. Now, my dear student, basing our calculations from what we have learned, we are told that there are 2 towns here. There is Makendo. So we have Makendo and Mombasa. A bus left Makendo at 11:45 a.m. So the bus left at 11:45 a.m. and traveled towards Mombasa at an average speed of 80 kilometers per hour. A Nissan Matatu left Makendo. So we have a Nissan Matatu. Nissan left at what time? Left at 1:15 a.m. at an average speed of 120 kilometers per hour. The distance, now my dear student, this is how you should arrange your work for easier calculation. The distance between Makendo and Mombasa is 400 kilometers. Determine the time of the day the Nissan overtook the bus. So the first thing that we need to get is the bus began the journey at 11:45 a.m. The Nissan began the journey at 1:15 p.m. Sorry, it's p.m. 1:15 p.m. So the first thing that to do is what is their departure time difference? What is their departure time difference? Departure time difference means by the time the Nissan began the journey, how long had the bus traveled? We'll take the time of the Nissan, departure time of the Nissan, 1:15 p.m. in 24-hour system is 13:15. You subtract 11:45. So my dear student, 15 minus 45 is impossible. You borrow 1 hour, so 1 hour is 60 minutes, plus 15 is 75. So 75 minus 45, that is 0. 7 minus 4 is 3. So we have 30. Here you are left with the 12. 12 minus 11 is 1. So that means their departure time difference is 1 hour 30 minutes. What do we mean? By the time the Nissan was beginning the journey at 1:15 p.m., the bus had already traveled for 1 hour 30 minutes. So my question is, what distance had the bus traveled by the time the Matatu was beginning the journey? We have seen the bus had already traveled for 1 hour 30 minutes. And the speed of the bus, so this is the time taken by the bus, By the time Nissan departed. So the distance traveled by the bus, distance, we know DST, distance is speed times time. So the distance traveled by the bus, by 1:15 p.m. will be the speed of the bus, 80 kilometers per hour, multiplied by the difference in their departure time, 1 hour 30 minutes, which is 1.5 hours. I know you have your calculators back at home, and I'm also going to do it together with you. What is 80 multiplied by 1.5? That is 120 kilometers. My dear student, what is 120 kilometers? 120 kilometers is the distance traveled by the bus by the time the Nissan began the journey. That means that at 1:15 p.m. the bus had already traveled 120 kilometers. The bus had already traveled 120 kilometers. This is the bus. So when the Nissan was leaving, when the Nissan was starting the journey at 1:15, the bus had traveled 120 kilometers. How have we done it? The difference in departure time, 1:15 minus 11:45. Then that time you multiply by the speed of the bus, because distance is given by the speed multiplied by time. So speed of the bus times difference in their departure time will give us the distance traveled by the bus when the Nissan was beginning the journey. That is the first step. My dear student, I believe that you have understood. What is the next step? From our formulas, we said, for us to get the time taken to overtake, we need the distance between the two vehicles that we have already gotten as 120 kilometers divided by the relative speed. So obvious, the next step is to get the relative speed. The next step is to get the relative speed. And the relative speed. Now, what did we say in our formulas? For vehicles moving in the same direction, what do we do to the spins? I know you are responding. Yeah, you are saying that we subtract the spin. And that is very correct. Craft for yourself back at home. We are going to subtract their spins because these vehicles are moving in the same direction. So the relative speed will be 120 kilometers per hour, that is the highest speed, minus 80 kilometers per hour, which is the least speed, and our relative speed will be 120 minus 80 is 40 kilometers per hour. Now, my dear student, we have the relative speed and we have the distance between the two vehicles by 1:15 p.m. We are going to get the time taken. I believe that you have written this. We are going to now get the time taken to overtake. The time taken to overtake, time taken to overtake will be given by the distance between the vehicles, by 1:15 p.m. So we take the distance between the vehicles by the time the vehicle that left left. So we take the distance between the vehicles, which is 120 kilometers, divided by the relative speed, which is 40 kilometers per hour. This is distance between them divided by relative speed. 120 kilometers divided by 40 kilometers per hour, it will give us, you also have your calculator. Let us calculate together. 120 divided by 40 will have 3. We'll have, that is relative. We are taking the time taken. Yeah, that is hours. Time is given in hours. We'll have 3 hours. So the time taken to overtake, the time taken by the Nissan to overtake the bus is 3 hours. But what is my question? What is the question, my dear student? The time of the day the Nissan overtook the bus. So the question is, who is overtaking who? It is the Nissan who is overtaking the bus. So at what time did the Nissan begin the journey? The Nissan began the journey at 1:15 p.m. How many hours did it take to overtake the bus? It took 3 hours to overtake the bus. So at what time did it overtake the bus? It overtook the bus at 4:15 p.m. And you conclude and say that the Nissan overtook the bus at 4:15 p.m. or 16-15 hours in 24-hour system. Someone may be asking, Teacher Kelvin, why have we not added the 3 hours to 11:45 a.m.? This is the answer. Who is overtaking who? You are asked the time of the day the Nissan overtook. So you will take the time the Nissan started the journey and the time it took to overtake the bus. And you will get 4:15 p.m. Question number B, my dear student. I can erase this. So question number B, very fast, we are writing it very fast. Both vehicles continue towards Mombasa at the original speeds. Both vehicles continue towards Mombasa, towards Mombasa at their original speeds. At their original speeds. At the original speeds. Find how long. Find how long the matatu had to wait. At Mombasa, before the bus arrived. Before the bus arrived. Again, how many marks? 5 marks. So now, my dear student, this is very simple. Both vehicles continue with their original speeds. And now that you have the question, I can erase so that we can have a space to do the question. You can continue sending any question, any comment on the number that is on your screen. I will answer at the end of the lesson if we have time. So we are told both vehicles continue towards Mombasa at their original speed. What is the speed of the bus? Speed of the bus was 80 kilometers per hour. What is the speed of the matatu? Speed of the matatu was 120 kilometers per hour. So they continue after they have met. After the Nissan has overtook the bus, they continue towards Mombasa at the original speed. My question is, by the time the bus was overtaken by the Nissan, what was the distance remaining towards Mombasa? My question is, by the time the Nissan overtook the bus, what distance is remaining for the two vehicles to get to Mombasa? How do we get it? Distance from Mombasa. Distance from Mombasa. Distance from Mombasa to overtaking point. Distance from Mombasa to overtaking point. Why are we doing this? We need to know, now that the bus has been overtaken by the Nissan and they have started moving in the same direction with their original speeds, what distance had been covered, or what is the remaining distance from Mombasa? How do we get it? We know the distance between Makendo and Mombasa is 400 kilometers. So we need to know the distance traveled by the Nissan or by both vehicles at overtaking point. Distance traveled at the overtaking point. Distance traveled up to the overtaking point. Distance traveled up to the overtaking point. Distance traveled up to the overtaking point. This is what we'll do. We'll take the speed of the vehicle that overtook the other one. That is the speed of the Nissan. How do we get distance? DST. Distance is speed times time. We multiply by the time taken to overtake. What are we looking at? The distance traveled up to the overtaking point. The speed of the Nissan, because it's the one that overtook the bus, times the time it took to overtake the bus will give us the distance up to the overtaking point, which is 360 kilometers. So, my dear student, if the total distance between Makendo and Mombasa was 400 kilometers, what is the remaining distance? What is the remaining distance? The remaining distance for them to arrive to Mombasa is the total distance, 400 kilometers, minus the distance they have both traveled up to the overtaking point. And this will give us 40 kilometers. So the remaining distance, the distance that is remaining for the two vehicles to get to Mombasa is 40 kilometers. Is 40 kilometers. So my dear student, what is the question? The question is, both vehicles continue towards Mombasa at their original speeds. Find how long the matatu had to wait at Mombasa before the bus arrived. We have already known that the remaining distance is 40 kilometers. So, what time taken by bus to arrive to Mombasa? Time taken by bus to arrive to Mombasa. Again, DST. Time is distance over speed. So, the distance remaining, 40 kilometers, over the speed of the bus, which was 80 kilometers per hour. So this means that the bus, after being overtaken by the Nissan, it took half an hour. This is half an hour or 30 minutes to reach to Mombasa. What about the time taken by the Nissan? Time taken by the Nissan, again, is the distance remaining after the Nissan overtook the bus, 40 kilometers, over the speed of the Nissan, which was 120 kilometers per hour. So how long did the Nissan take to arrive to Mombasa? This will give us 4/12, which is, again, I think 1/3, yeah? not thinking, it's true, that hours, which when converted to minutes is 20 minutes. So after the Nissan overtook the bus, they moved with the original speeds, and the distance that was remaining to Mombasa was 40 kilometers, and they have the original speeds. So we can get the time taken by the bus to reach and the time taken by the Nissan to reach Mombasa. So how long had the Nissan had to wait for the bus to arrive? Very simple. It had to wait for 30 minutes minus 20 minutes. If it arrived after 20 minutes, the other one arrived after 30 minutes. So it had to wait for it for how long? 30 minutes by minus 20 minutes, which is 10 minutes. And you will conclude and say, therefore, the Nissan had to wait for 10 minutes for the bus to arrive. For the bus to arrive. All right. That is all about vehicles moving in the same direction. As I said, you can continue sending your comments and your questions so that I can answer them within the remaining few minutes. Yes, thank you, James from Eldoret. The lesson is so wonderful. I've understood that concept. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the question. Yeah, I'm still looking at whether there is any question sent. Yes, for the vehicles moving in opposite direction, that is Anne from Nyandarua. I'm going to answer that. Vehicles moving in opposite direction is the next one. Yes, Joy from Nakuru. The lesson is so interesting. Why is the school where you teach located? The school is located in Kitengela. I'll answer all those other questions that you sent. Thank you so much. We have some few minutes that we can review or have a question on vehicles moving in opposite direction. Vehicles moving in opposite direction. It's good that time will allow us, even if we write the question. Coast bus. Coast bus left Nairobi. Now these are vehicles moving in opposite direction at 8 a.m. and traveled towards Mombasa at an average speed of at an average speed of 80 kilometers per hour. At 8:30 a.m., Lamu bus left Mombasa. Lamu bus left Mombasa towards Nairobi, at an average speed of 120 kilometers per hour. Given that the distance between Nairobi and Mombasa Mombasa is 400 kilometers. Determine Roman 1, the time Lamu bus arrived in Nairobi. The time Lamu bus arrived in Nairobi. So we first do, because so that we can see whether time allows, we'll first do Roman 1, and then if time allows, we'll do the other Romans. So we have said yes, we have said that the coastal bus left Nairobi at 8 a.m. Coastal bus left Nairobi at, so we have Nairobi and we have Mombasa. We have the coastal bus, and we have the Lamu bus. Before we proceed to all other statements, let us check our question. The time Lamu bus arrive in Nairobi. And we are told that coastal bus left Nairobi at 8 a.m. and traveled towards Mombasa at an average speed of 80 kilometers per hour. At 8:30 a.m., Lamu bus left Mombasa towards Nairobi at an average speed of 120 kilometers per hour. Given that the distance between Nairobi and Mombasa is 400 kilometers, determine the time Lamu bus arrive in Nairobi. That question is very simple. We know DST. Time is equals to distance over speed. Time is equals to distance over speed. So we are asked the time Lamu bus arrive in Nairobi. What is the distance between Nairobi and Mombasa? The distance between Nairobi and Mombasa is 400 kilometers. What is the speed of the Lamu bus? The speed of the Lamu bus is 120 kilometers. So the time taken to arrive to Nairobi by the Lamu bus is 400 kilometers divided by 120 kilometers per hour. I'm going to calculate as you calculate also. 400 kilometers divided by 120 kilometers, that is 3.5 hours. That is 3.5 hours, which is the same as 3 hours 20 minutes. We are asked the time the Lamu bus arrived in Nairobi. When did the Lamu bus leave Mombasa? It left at 8:30 a.m. And how long did it take to get to Nairobi? It took 3.5 hours, which is 3 hours 20 minutes. How did we get 3 hours 20 minutes? We took the distance between Nairobi and Mombasa divided by the speed of that Lamu bus. And therefore, to get the time the Lamu bus arrive in Nairobi, will take the time of departure from Mombasa, 8:30 a.m. You add the time it took to arrive to Nairobi, which is 3 hours 20 minutes, and this will give us 30 plus 20 is 50, and 8 plus 3, 8, 9, 10, 11, 8:50 a.m. Therefore, my dear student, the Lamu bus arrived at Nairobi at 11:50 a.m. At 11:50 a.m. My dear student, the other two questions, because they need their concept that requires more time, we'll do them in our next lesson. The other remaining questions, Roman 2 and Roman 3, we'll do them in the next lesson. Roman 2, we'll just write them. Roman 2 asks, you determine the time the two buses met. The time the two buses met. The time the two buses met. The two buses met. That is Roman 2 that we'll do in our next lesson. And Roman 3, the distance from Nairobi to the meeting point. Distance from Nairobi. Distance from Nairobi to the meeting point. Distance from Nairobi to the meeting point. Thank you very much. Read to more questions or comments, and then I'm going to conclude our lesson of today. Thank you, Isaac. Isaac again from Muranga. Thank you for the lesson. For the first time I've understood linear motion. Thank you very much. I'm still reading. Yes, Grace from Kirinyaga. Thank you very much. You are teaching very well. Where do you teach? I said Lakewood in Kitengela. Thank you very much, my dear students, for the lesson. And before I conclude, I have this book, Boosting Mathematics Performance, KCSE revision book. I am the author, Teacher Kelvin. I am the author of this book. A very interesting book, a very motivating book, a book that will help you achieve the best in KCSE. If you want to prove, buy the book and check the past KCSE questions like 2022 and 2023, and you'll see how the book is going to be of great benefit. Thank you very much, my dear students, for the lesson. My name is Teacher Kelvin Fudi Nyambura from Lakewood Senior Girls School. Never forget to pray before you do anything. Thank you, my dear students.